Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the internet. It's your boy, the Kyle Gass of the Guard Pass, and the Jack Black to Robin Black's Jack Slack, Jack Slack. And you find me in a really good mood because we had a cracking weekend of fights. Been a while since I've had since we've had a weekend of really solid fights on multiple cards. But it happened, and it was pretty bloody good. So we'll dive right in what was actually the least interesting fight of the weekend for me. Demetrius Johnson versus Wilson Hayes. I mean, I've been campaigning for Wilson Hayes to get some attention since they pulled his title shot the first time, but really this was the worst outcome because he just got the title shot again, so nobody knew who the fuck he was. And it's been used as part of the Demetrius Johnson best ever, perfect at everything campaign. But at any rate, he went in there, he got his 16th defense, whatever it is. Equaled Anderson Silva's record, but Anderson Silva should have one more because of Travis Lutter, who famously missed weight. So that wasn't a title fight, even though Anderson Silva won it. But then we're getting into all this greatest of all times bollocks, and to make it clear where I stand on that, it's bollocks. People have been asking me, like, could a 205-pound Demetrius Johnson beat John Jones? And I'm just like, that's this. Just don't ask me that. It doesn't matter. If you did ask me, I think John Jones would kick the shit out of his legs. We talked about this in Killing the King, Demetrius Johnson, however long ago. It's not a weakness, it's a habit. The way that Johnson fights, moving around constantly, switching stances, darting him with the punches, he is very rarely in position to deal with low kicks. Henry Cejudo knocked him out of his stance with a few low kicks he threw. Wilson Hayes landed almost 0 punches, landed 12 out of 15 leg kicks attempted. And when he did, Johnson was drawn out of his stance almost every time. So there is that. That's still there, and I think that's important. If someone is going to beat Demetrius Johnson, it's either going to be by dragging him to the mat and just overwhelming him, but that seems unlikely given that guys like Henry Cejudo struggled so much to hold him down, or by punting his legs and using that as part of a larger strategy. And Wilson Hayes' coaches were calling for him to kick the legs, but he was busy trying to box with his sub 65-inch reach or whatever it is. So it wasn't a great fight, but you saw all that stuff that's still there about DJ. I mean, this is going to be the new Ronda Rousey thing. You remember when I was saying, yeah, there's this stuff in Ronda Rousey that, a better fighter with a better game plan could exploit, and everyone was like, no, she's got no weaknesses. Same thing with Anderson Silva. Same thing anytime I say I do a Killing the King about anyone, there's all these people who go, no, there's no way they can lose. And of course there is. I mean, Demetrius Johnson does a lot of stuff like his back hits the fence way too often when he's circling the cage. He eats low kicks and they drag him out of stance. There's a few things like that. But overall, DJ fought a great fight. Really liked what he was doing. You'll see the same pattern over and over again that he was doing. He would jab out of his southpaw stance, bring in Hayes towards him, and then he would step out with his right leg into an orthodox stance and continue circling out to that open side, and then Hayes would move forward and he'd crack him with a right straight from the open side because Hayes was a southpaw. It was a really interesting little sequence, and it happened 8 or 10 times during the fight. Set up a lot of takedowns off it. He was similarly using the switch 45 to set up the kick into the open side, so he was jabbing from the same stance as Hayes, and then he'd switch into the opposite stance and throw in the body kick from the open angle. Really nice stuff. DJ's passing is always on point. He's another one of those ones who really hammers home the importance of timing and consistency when passing the guard. There's all sorts of guys who have crushing pressure guard passes and things like that, but those take time. DJ's very good at just, like, if he lands in the butterfly guard, he'll hop over the legs just quick as anything. And he'll keep doing it. That's the other thing. Guys recover guard and he immediately passes again. So not a terribly interesting fight, aside from the advertising campaign around it. And then people were telling me afterwards that they hadn't even heard of Wilson Hayes before this fight. I was like, good job, UFC. The UFC, they can promote shit when they want to. Like, somehow, Jeremy Stevenson is marketed as this incredible knockout artist. He's got 6 knockout wins in 25 appearances in the UFC. 10 years in the UFC. And he's knocked out 6 guys. And guys are still like, oh my god, knockout artist. You're just thinking, no. So clearly they were able to market him that effectively. Why not actually try and market some fucking flyweights? Especially as the best fight of the night was Tim Elliott versus Lewis Smolka, and that was just so fast and so fluid and so technical. Just loved that to bits. And the crowd did too, which was really significant for me. At the end of the first round, the crowd were going berserk, and by the end of the fight, they were still going berserk. There was no, we're bored of this rolling around on the floor. Very few strikes thrown in that fight. Very little ground and pound really taken effect. But every time a submission came even close, or a back was taken, or anything like that, the crowd went mental. And that I really appreciated. But that is such a good fight. If you haven't seen it, watch it. It's the best fight of the night. All sorts of crazy shit. Lewis Smolka was getting taken down and using the switch to try and get up. Went for the switch at one point. Elliott rolled over him, and then Smolka was trying to truck him to take the back. All sorts of cool sequences like that. Smolka using his guillotine to claim top possession a lot. At one point, Smolka's leg was straight over his head, like a hamstring stretch style. And Elliott started trying to dart him with his leg in, too. It was just an absolutely bonkers fight, and you should watch it. What else happened? The co-main event was Michelle Waterson versus Rose Namajunas. I have a very big spot. I've got a very big soft spot for Rose Namajunas because I haven't ever had to put up with an advertising campaign about how she's cute and also fights. Even though she is cute and also fights, but I think she sort of shot that in the foot for the UFC when she shaved all her hair off. But yeah, I just love her because she keeps improving and coming in and smashing these hype trains. Michelle Waterson, a lot of it was a sales pitch. I've had people telling me she's the best kicker in the UFC, the best kicker in the strawweight division, the best striker in the strawweight division. I've never seen her really outstrike anyone aside from people like Paige Van Zandt and that 46-year-old woman. But she was going to that side kick constantly to the lead leg, and a couple of occasions Namajunas was trying to throw the right kick into the open side, and Michelle Waterson stamped on her standing leg at the same time, and those are the ones that make me cringe. If there's going to be a busted up knee, like a bent backwards knee in the UFC, linear low line kick while someone's standing on one leg is probably going to be the one that does it. It was bothering Namajunas, and you saw her at the second round come out and slap her lead leg, being like, come on, kick me in the lead leg more, even though it's clearly bothering me. But it was basically all Waterson did. Her boxing was not there. And then when she did glide in with the side kick but didn't actually land anything good, she'd end up with her foot inside of Namajunas', and Namajunas would have the angle. And Namajunas would hit with the right straight. And then the second time that happened was in the second round, and Namajunas hit her with the right straight and the right high kick, which sent Waterson to the mat. Head and arm throw concedes back control yet again. Sometimes I point this out every time. It's always happening in women's MMA, and it's like the most common takedown and also the most common way of giving up your back. And every time I point it out, people are like, huh, you just don't understand head and arms. They're a move at the moment, and there are people who are very good at them, but if you go for them all the time and you try and force them, you're just giving up your back. And that seems to be what's happening over and over in women's MMA. Even people like Ronda Rousey, who were amazing specifically at head and arm throws, or haragoshi, or whatever you want to call it, gave up their back at some point by doing it to both Liz Carmouche and Holly Holm. But anyway, great choke finish. Great showing by Namajunas, who just keeps getting better on the feet. If you compare her now to the spasmodic flailing mess that was her striking against that girl, what was her name? The champion before Joanna Jędrzejczyk. Carla Esparza. If you watch her fight with Carla Esparza, she's just leaping in, like Max Holloway when I was like, please stop wasting your potential, Max. Just leaping in with kicks and knees all the time, getting taken down. So Namajunas, cracking fighter. Want to see her in with the winner of Jędrzejczyk versus Andrade. Andrade has a great chance in that fight, I reckon. The weirdest thing is that I've had people telling me that Michelle Waterson's the best kicker in MMA because she does the high kick stretching routine thing on her Instagram or whatever. And you're going, no, even in the same division, Joanna Jędrzejczyk lands her kicks all the time. Michelle Waterson very rarely lands good kicks. And really didn't do much in this fight aside from sidekicking the lead leg. She didn't show much of anything. But, I like Waterson, so I can't stand being sold someone for something they're not, I can't stand being told to like a fighter and that they're going to be the next big thing when they haven't proven they're going to be the next big thing. Anyway, talking of next big things, Bobby Knuckles, Robert Whittaker. Bobby Knuckles made it into the commentary, which was fucking awesome. Well done, John Anik. Put it on Jacare. I mean, the story on Jacare was always he has a big right hand, he throws a right front kick well, he dives for long shots, and he hits inside trips off the cage. But he is so strong, and he can do it so well, and once you're down there, you're going to get submitted. But Whittaker's distance management was perfect, and do you know what? This event really hammered home, this event and Rumble Johnson the other week, really hammered home that the strikes that you don't land, no matter how hard you hit, don't matter. You watched Jeremy Stevenson chase after his guy for 15 minutes swinging at air and tiring himself out. You watched Roy Nelson. I skipped through the Roy Nelson fight, and I went to like minute 4 of round 1, and he was already breathing hard, and I was like, oh, classic Roy Nelson fight. Also, I saw the length of the video, and I was just like, okay, decision, so Roy Nelson's losing. But yeah, I mean, Robert Whittaker can hit as hard as either of those guys on any given day, I'm fairly sure. But the thing is that he makes sure that he lands lots of punches, and it doesn't matter if they're 50% of what he can throw if he's giving himself a hernia doing it. He's landing these punches, and the connections that hurt Jacare weren't much different from the ones that didn't. They just landed cleaner. He caught him circling into the right high kick. He caught him with the right hand while his chin was up in the air, and he was trying to parry the jab. But all those punches were thrown, all those strikes were thrown with the same level of commitment. He wasn't swinging his heart out. He was just making sure that he connected lots, and then when he did, some of them hurt more than others. Beautiful work by Whittaker throughout. We talked about the double jab, we talked about feinting with the lead shoulder and then stepping in with the jab, so it's like a 2-part jab. Basically, you start the step, they flinch, and then you throw in the rest of the jab once they're done flinching, or while they're returning to their guard. He lands so many punches like that. He uses the jab into the left hook and the left hook into the jab beautifully. His right hand proved to be problematic for Jacare when Jacare forgot about it. What you noticed was Whittaker was well prepared for Souza to be throwing the overhand right, because Jacare can hit, he just only has one punch. So he'd jab in and he'd immediately get down behind the lead shoulder, or he'd jab and circle way off to Souza's left. Really, really liked the left front kick from Whittaker, which went unnoticed by a lot of people because front kicks to the body generally do, but he was trying to catch Souza as he stepped in, and he was jamming him with this lead leg front kick, and it clearly winded Souza, so it was pretty cool. Good weekend for lead leg front kicks. Rena did a few in Rising, winded her opponent with them. Really nice kicks. And then Whittaker also used a right leg front kick to step in with a shifting left hook, which was what sent Jacare back onto the fence and started him circling out in a panic, and got the right high kick to come up and knock him down. Terrible stoppage by Mario Yamasaki. Seems like a cool dude, but just awful as a referee. But a great fight. Great all-round fight. And I really liked Whittaker's work along the fence. Jacare put him there, and he was constantly fighting the hands, getting his head underneath. Jacare dropped on this trip takedown without ideal grips because Whittaker was fighting off his hands so well. And then he tried to roll under Whittaker. Whittaker kept a hold of a seatbelt across of a wrist across Jacare's back. And he came up and he finally hit that inside trip and took the back, but Whittaker did a great job of scraping him off on the fence. Just perfect performance by Bobby Knuckles. And a reminder that we all think Jacare, the big strong grappler, I can't see the former welterweight being able to wrestle him off for however many rounds. But it was the speed and precision and the distance management of Whittaker that really did Jacare in. After this fight, I was thinking I would love to see Whittaker against Romero, because he'd be dealing with the same sort of problems, the big strong wrestler. But Romero is confident enough in the striking and wild enough that he could give Whittaker a lot of openings to strike into. Certainly it's the pace that Whittaker puts on people. He keeps striking consistently. And Michael Bisping's been showing this for years. You don't even have to hit that hard if you're going for it constantly and making the other man work constantly. Bad matchup maybe, I think, Luke Rockhold, because Whittaker has a tendency to reach. I didn't put this in my article, but I had some GIFs saved of him reaching, but he does it in almost every fight. He does lead with his face sometimes. and he can be drawn into overextending, which is what Wonderboy did against him. And Luke Rockhold loves to skip back with the check right hook. A very long stance, tries to be evasive. I mean, if Rockhold goes to him, Whittaker probably knocks him out. But if Rockhold draws him in, that's a good fight for Rockhold, I think. What else happened? Alexander Volkov versus Roy Nelson. I don't need to talk about that. Someone asked me why I don't like heavyweights. I've liked some heavyweight fights, but to me, if you don't turn up in shape to go 15 minutes, you're not doing your job. That's just how I feel about the heavyweight division. I feel like none of them are ready to go 15 minutes, except a few like Stipe and Velasquez and guys like that. Oh, Tom Duquesnoy. He French? I think he's French. He fought Patrick Williams. Patrick Williams was, it seemed to be being fed to him because he'd had, 600 days off or something like that. But Duquesnoy really struggled with the takedowns and stuff early on. Very hittable guy, but I did like his moving into elbow and knee along the fence. Really nice forward-moving fighting and not relying on his hands. Too many people rely on their hands. They're like, I'm going to knock him out with my hands. If you aren't naturally a big hitter with your hands, you can still knock people out with your elbows and your knees. And your kicks, those are all much heavier weapons. And everyone's obsessed with throwing them bungalows, This is again what Rena showed at the weekend. I've been saying for years, I would love to see some women develop a good front kick because your legs are so heavy and it's such a easy target. And most women can't hit that hard with their hands. It's a very hard thing to develop. But almost anyone can be taught to kick hard. So Duquesnoy, I'll hold off on the hype for now, but I enjoyed it a lot. Didn't watch the Bobby Green one. Yeah, let's do some Rising now because I loved Rising too. Rising didn't do tremendous. Well, actually, both these cards didn't do tremendously well on the ratings. I think if they'd pushed Whittaker and Jacare for the main event, I think that would have been an amazing piece of advertising. People care about the middleweight title picture. Jacare is fairly well known. They could have been competing with other stuff. I didn't check it, but putting Demetrius Johnson top of the card when he provably doesn't sell fights, and that's mainly the UFC's fault with the marketing of the flyweight division, just seemed to be a waste here. But the Rising card, I only watched bits of it. I didn't really care about Kawajiri versus Burchak and the Geronimo dos Santos. I'm not going to watch a Geronimo dos Santos fight. Horiguchi beat up his guy, which just hammered home that the UFC has no fucking clue what they're doing with flyweights. That's the guy that's going to be in position in 2 years' time to take the spot of DJ. That's the guy with all the potential in the world. Gave DJ fits on the feet in their first fight, but didn't really have the grappling down. Started working with ATT, got much better. Got past Ali Bagutinov, a very strong grappler. But that's the UFC's business, not mine. Rena versus Dora Perez, whatever. Really good fight. Perez came out and immediately stuck to Rena. Head and arm, dropped to her back and started trying to come up onto Rena's back from the guard. And then switched to an armbar. It looked like she had Rena in trouble for a little bit. It was very good strategy by her. Come out and immediately stick to her, even if you have to pull guard. This is what I like when you're watching someone like Wilson Hayes against Demetrius Johnson, and they're probably not going to be able to take them down consistently right from the start. These grapplers who can't pull guard when they need to, it's just another string to your bow lost. If you aren't in control of the takedowns, you need to be able to drag the guy on top of you and do something with it. So Rena comes back, lovely body kicks. On the ground, she did a little bit of Sakuraba stuff. Sakuraba was an awful guard passer. People try and argue that he wasn't, but he was. The Brazilians worked out very early that if they just laid on their back in open guard, he couldn't do much. I think it was Ebenezer Fontes Braga who was the first to do it, but Alan Goes and all sorts of other people did it to him. So Sakuraba just got good at kicking the legs and trying to stomp them from standing. In fact, I think BJ Penn referred to one man standing and one man being on his back as Sakuraba position. But Sakuraba used to try and trick guys with all sorts of stuff, like he'd run up and try and do a two-footed jump stomp over their guard. And then against Renzo Gracie, he did the run-up, but as Renzo Gracie's feet came up, he slid in with a side kick through the guard to the head. It was awesome. But he was a dreadful guard passer. But Rena was doing a great thing where she did a kick to the thigh and then faked the kick and jumped in with the stomp with the lead leg. So, bicycle kick stuff, but stomping on the ground. I've missed stomps. I mean, they're not good for fighter health, but I do like them. Because it's a whole new technical aspect of the game. Whereas elbows, I do love elbows done well, but a lot of the time it can just be, oh, this is something I can now do while I'm holding for dear life from half guard or whatever. I'll just slip in small elbows and the referee won't stand me up. Tenshin Asakawa did great work against Francesco Gigliotti, whoever he is. Just blasting through the open side with the kicks and the left straight. He's hot shit. Everyone loves Asakawa at the moment. I know that Lawrence Kenshin loves him. Heath Herring lost to Satoshi Ishii. I don't really like seeing Heath Herring back. He's good on commentary too. Jazzy Gabert, Jazzy Alpha Female, lost in an awful fight. The only thing that I really took away from that fight was I started watching the gloves, and I was like, these gloves are horrible. They had these green Hulk gloves, and it didn't go with any of the colours that they had on the ring or the logo or any shit like that. Just dreadful. And then the other interesting fight from that was Yasuki Yachi versus Darren Cruikshank. I was like, who is this guy who knocked out Darren Cruikshank? I remembered, I think I've rolled with him. It would have been years ago. He was probably like a kid at the time, but I have met this kid, and I think I have trained with him. But he did a great job. I thought he looked really good. He was looking for these counter right hooks, and he finally did catch Cruikshank lunging. Lots of kicking into the open side, obviously, in that fight. Couple of nice left straights from Yachi, and Cruikshank looking for the sidekick. I really liked his defensive sidekick in his last fight, but he was getting wild in this one. So he lunges with his face. Yachi clacks him with the right hook and puts him down and out. Huge win for Yachi, because, I'd not really heard of any of the guys he's beaten, having looked at his record just after that. But he's been doing a good job for himself in Rising. He's getting some quick finishes. Like the knee that they kept showing on the highlights was brutal. I just love kneecap right into rib. Those are rare, but if you can catch a guy flustering or like if you jump in and they raise their hands really high, you can catch that knee, just point into the ribs. Perfect. Benil Dariush was doing a really interesting one against... was it Edson Barboza? Might have been Barboza, might have been someone else. But he was throwing an overhand, as he threw the overhand, he jumped forward with the knee from the same side. So the punch had nothing on it, it just slapped against their guard. But because they'd raised their elbow, the knee would slot in right under it. Anyway, great weekend of fights. Really enjoyed all those. I think the real takeaway is volume and precision mean a lot more to everyone. Even if you're a power puncher, actually landing the punches, even if they're half power, that's so much more preferable to not landing anything at all but throwing as hard as you can. And it's still not catching, it's been hundreds of years we've been fighting and it's still not catching on with a lot of people. Anyway, let's do some questions. We're going to the Facebook thread for some rapid fire questions today. Creven, great name, says changes Cormier should make to his game plan for John Jones to get the win. I presume he means for Cormier to get the win against John Jones in the rematch. My boy Jeff has immediately answered this guy with the comment lateral movement. Yes, if you remember what I wrote about the first fight, I wrote Killing the King John Jones up to that fight where I said you can't just plod at him. And we knew that for a long time. That's why we knew that Rampage Jackson wasn't going to be much of a test for him. Because if you just plod straight forward and the other guy's main weapon is jamming kicks and long body kicks and head kicks, you're going to just eat strikes and then they'll circle offline, which is exactly what happened. John Jones also did a brilliant job of controlling him in the clinch, removing his left leg from Cormier anytime Cormier stepped in to pick up his favourite high crotch. But the main thing I would say for Cormier would be bodywork, because Jones had him at the mercy of bodywork in the first fight. He showed it, how much you can tire a guy by kicking him in the body and making him come forward constantly. I think Cormier either needs to move laterally and level change and do all the Alexander Gustafsson stuff to get close to Jones if he's going on the aggressive, or make Jones come to him. The main problem that a guy has on the outside with John Jones is the stamping kicks to the lead leg, and those are mitigated with lateral movement. You saw how easily Alexander Gustafsson got Jones down to throwing like 5 of those in the whole fight because as soon as he missed one, Gustafsson took him down. And that's the thing too, if you're wrestling John Jones straight up, from 12 o'clock, you're coming straight at him. That's his whole life. He spent training to do that. And that's where Daniel Cormier couldn't get him down the first time. Whereas Alexander Gustafsson knocked the lead leg offline when he threw an ill-advised kick and proceeded into an easy takedown. The best guys in the world can't do what they do as well as they normally do it if you come in from a weird angle or if they concede a dominant angle. So movement, very big part of that for the rematch. Vincent asks, core points on how to pressure effectively. Do you need to be able to win exchanges to pressure successfully? I think probably yes. You either need to, when you get in close, you need to be winning the exchanges or landing knees or elbows that your opponent doesn't have, or you need to be a guy who's looking for the clinch and can win the fight from there. If you're a guy who excels on the outside and you're constantly going forward, you're doing two things that counteract each other and you're making your own job harder. JR asks, does WME sell the UFC back to Zuffa at a bargain basement price after another year? And we get to see good fighters not go to Bellator. Yeah, this is one of those conspiracy theories people throw out there, but how bad would that look for Dana White? Dana White stayed on with the UFC and got a nice payout. But if he stayed on, ran the business into the ground, and then stayed on again when his friends, the Fertitas, bought it again, you'd hope that someone would do some investigating into that. Linda McMahon and her small business council or whatever. Yeah, I think that'd be a little bit too on the nose. Shane asks, McGregor versus Woodley, who wins? It's 170 pounds, man. Conor McGregor is the lightweight champion of the world, but has fought 2 world-class lightweights. So we don't even know how he holds up as a lightweight, really. I'm not confident picking him against any top 10 welterweight at the moment. I mean, he could well go do it, but that's a bridge to cross when we get there, much like the Mayweather fight. Yoel versus DC, says Jake. Not really a question, but I'd take DC by being bigger. And also, I think that DC is good enough in the clinch that he could make Romero work in the way that Weidman was trying to do but couldn't because he was thrown off so easily every time he closed for a takedown attempt or anything like that. I think that DC could stick to him and make him work, and I think then you would start to see, third round Yoel being less of a threat. I'm assuming this would be a 5-round fight. Is GSP versus Bisping going to be something like Silva versus Griffin? No. Strange question. Does Whittaker have the grappling chops to let his hands do the talking and win the belt? Well, he just showed that he does against the best grappler in the division. Whether he could do that amid the pace of a furious 5-round fight against a guy who could strike as well, we'll see. I can't forgive Derek Brunson for letting him off with such a weird fight in what should have been his big test against a strong wrestler. How important do you think the use of amateur MMA is for the development process of young fighters / future talents? I'm not a big fan of amateur combat sports at all, to be honest. I think if you're getting hit, you should be getting paid for it, unless it's like Olympic level, but then you've got to do so many bouts to get up to that sort of level, and obviously there is no Olympic level in mixed martial arts, but amateur level mixed martial arts is similar to very low professional level mixed martial arts in that it's a very dangerous place where you could get matched up against the next John Jones, and the guys matching you up could well know that. You could just be used as padding for some guy because you're both 0-0 or 1-0. Yeah, the whole amateur and low level stuff makes me uncomfortable, but at least if you're doing low level professional stuff, you're getting paid for it. Holloway versus Ferguson. What do you think of this stylistically, despite weight division differences? Oh, I like that. It'd be interesting to see how Holloway deals with the pressure. He struggled a lot when Conor McGregor was getting in his face, but Conor McGregor used that nice sidekick into the lead leg to keep Holloway at a distance until he could leap in with the kicks and the punches and things. Yeah, damn, that's a good thought. Oh, I hope that happens now, because I'd quite like to write about that. Tom asks, your thoughts on doing away with 3-month camps, 2 weeks notice, then game on, fewer injuries, better cards, ? No. I mean, I don't like anything that takes us away from having the time to prepare. If you did, like, everyone just trains for a fight and then gets their fight announced 2 weeks out or whatever, you would see a big drop-off in quality game plans, I think. It's very hard to train opponents specific for 2 weeks and then have confidence going in there. I think the longer, if we could, I'd like, 4 or 5 months training camps up to big fights, but it's a long time to anticipate things, I know, and especially with the ridiculous dropout rates in this sport. But I'm against any... It's like someone asked me last week if getting rid of coaches would be more interesting because it would make fights more mano a mano. I'm not really interested in that stuff. I'm interested in seeing how two of the best teams in the world, and that's what's interesting about this sport, is that you can have a world-class team and then a gym that only has one great fighter, but they could come in with a better game plan. They could see stuff that the other guy couldn't see. So what you're seeing is game plans applied through athletes. And I think that's what makes this sport so interesting, more than just watching two guys go for it without having the time to plan. But that's just me. Mr. Slack, love your work. Could you do something on Colonel W.E. Fairburn? Yeah, very famous pioneer of self-defense books. I'll do something about that for Fightland, I think. That sounds like a good idea. I'd also love to do something on Rex Applegate. Whoever the guy is updating the Jack Slack reading list on Goodreads. W.E. Fairburn stuff, can't remember the... Is it Get Tough? That might be the title. And the other one is Rex Applegate's Kill or Get Killed. Absolutely brilliant book. Tom says, as you'll remember, I'm a huge fan of Headbutts. But did you hear the sound of Shibata's head bouncing off Okada's at the last New Japan Pro Wrestling event? I looked this up afterwards because Shibata is like the darling of the Puro Wrestle lot. Dave Meltzer's always worshipping him. And Okada, had that amazing match with Kenny Omega, has a lot of good fights, or matches rather, despite his relatively mundane finishing move, the Rainmaker. But you do see it from time to time in MMA, so it's legit. But I've seen Shibata hit a couple of these headbutts, and it's always unnecessary, because he actually does it. Like, that's his thing. He does strong style headbutts, so he actually headbutts guys. And he does this headbutt, and you can see his eyes go misty. And I think he gets a cut on his head, but now apparently he might not ever get cleared to wrestle again. So it was a completely pointless bump, which didn't achieve much but make the crowd go, ooh. It's like Jim Cornette's always moaning about. If you shock guys, the way it used to be was that you convinced people you were hurting each other without actually hurting each other, and now everyone thinks that everything's a work, but you're actually hurting each other for no effect. It was just really stupid. I'll tell you who I do like, my boy Jack Gallagher. We're boys on Twitter, and he tweeted out, he Instagrammed out that he was reading the Notorious the other day. Sorry, Notorious, not The Notorious, for fuck's sake. Notorious, he tweeted out that he was reading that the other day. So he's a bit of a boy, but he's got I think he had 5 or 10 fights in professional MMA, but now he's one of the WWE's cruiserweights. I believe he's from Newcastle, but he plays this gentleman character, and it's really funny, with an umbrella and stuff like that. But if you've ever seen him do his headbutt, it looks really impressive and sounds really impressive, because it's like a sweet chin music, basically. He does the exaggerated head motion, and he slaps his thigh as he does it. So he does the headbutt with both hands down by his sides, and it's very aesthetically pleasing. You're like, wow, that looked legit. There's so many ways to do that without hurting yourself, but headbutts generally, you got to be careful with it. I mean, like Chris Benoit with the diving headbutts, and Daniel Bryan too. Everyone who's done those moves has fucked themselves up to a certain degree. I think Harley Race invented the diving headbutt from the top rope, and he said that he wished he'd never had. So yeah, Shibata, you can be an incredible talent, but also you gotta look after yourself, because you're doing. Everyone goes on about how pro wrestling's not real fighting and not real sport, but it's way more dangerous than MMA. Way more dangerous. Just especially in Japan, where they do the stupid barbed wire death matches and all that sort of shit. I can't remember who it was. Some lad, one of the Japanese lads who's really popular. Can't remember his name, but someone said he'd been approached up by WWE, turned him down, and someone sent a film of him doing like an outside street fight bit outside an arena in, I think it was Newcastle, and he's firing fireworks at the other guy, and then he points them at his chest and just fires these rockets onto his own chest. You're like, what the fuck is the point of that? Just crazy what some of these wrestlers will do. So yeah, didn't like the headbutt at all. Angus asks, is Jacare fucked? Is Jacare fucked? There you go, that's what Angus would say. Brackets, for any hopes of a title in the near future. And to that I say yes he is. That's the danger of trying to stay active while the UFC's fucking around with their title order. But then they are contractually obliged to offer you so many fights a year. You are contractually obliged to take said fights. Well, you have the option to turn them down, but you can end up on the shelf. I was talking to Ryan Hall a little while ago, and he was saying that the danger of people not liking that Gray Maynard fight, which I thought was terrific, just schooled him everywhere. But the danger of people not liking a fight is that the UFC can just put you on the shelf for as long as they care to do. So Jacare tried to stay busy, and it came back and bit him in the arse. And it's never say never, because all you have to do is wait for someone to get injured, and then you might be right back in the mix. But he's signed a new contract. He's apparently happy with that, so he's probably just going to keep submitting okay guys and getting big paydays. Sonny says, will you ever become a coach? One day, yeah. I mean, I've got a job, so I don't have the time, but one day I'd like to do some coaching, yeah. Lots of stuff to get out of the way first, and I don't know everything, and I don't feel confident enough about anything to be teaching it, apart from little tricks that I picked up from karate and boxing and a little bit of BJJ and so on. But it's you got to know so much to be a good coach, and my knowledge is in, what is it Warren Buffett says, have a little bit of knowledge in circles and then don't leave those circles. Yeah, that's where my knowledge is. Or questions about 10-9s and 10-8s. I'm not going to read that, sorry, but it just makes me remember how much I hate the judging system. Do you care who Conor fights at this point? Which of the potential opponents is the most interesting matchup stylistically in your opinion? I like Tony Ferguson because he's a wild man and he drives such a high pace, and McGregor has not been a very strong fighter over the distance. He's a guy who slows. And what you got with Ferguson is like Nate Diaz sort of pace, well, higher than that. He gets hit a lot more, but he also has other skills like his wrestling and his snap downs, in particular, snap down jitsu. I don't give a shit about the Mayweather match because, people keep telling me that it would be the biggest spectacle ever. They're like, oh, yeah, well, you don't have to care about the fight. You're paying for the spectacle. But to me, that's people wasting the time of one of the best current MMA fighters in the world to pursue a fight with a retired boxer who's probably going to school him anyway. It's a waste of McGregor's time and everyone's time. And the other thing is that he can make so much money from it, probably, that he might not ever need to fight again or want to fight again. And that's selfish, of me to say that, because he should take the money and run, to be honest. But actually, this just brings me back to what I was reading the other day when I was preparing the Jack Dempsey episode. Back then, when $1 Million Gates were just coming in, writers were harkening back to the days of the past when guys fought just for the honour of it, even though that was never really true. But there were so many writers just being like, oh, the money in the game, it's ruining people. But I'm doing it now. If he gets all that money, he never has to fight again. So yeah, I'd rather see him take on a top lightweight. That's what I'd like to see. He's got very few victories over top lightweights. He's 2-1 against really top lightweights. You could include Ivan Bushinga. It's a real shame that Ivan Bushinga has never got a chance in the UFC with how good his record is. while guys like Artem Lobov have managed to ride Conor McGregor's coattails into it. Right, not a lot going on this week, except for motorcycles whizzing by outside. What we're going to do is have a quick look at the weekend's fights. UFC Fight Night 108 in Bridgestone Arena, Nashville, Tennessee. You got Cub Swanson taking on Artem Lobov in the main event. Very strange fight to make. Artem Lobov looked much improved against Teruto Ishihara, using those lovely step-up little love tap kicks to the ankle to knock Ishihara out of his stance as he retreated to prevent the backstepping counters. You know, that looks like someone who's been training with Conor McGregor his whole life. But, you know, maybe he's got a chance in this one because Cub Swanson is a bit of a wild man. He'll step in and swing wildly at whoever. You know, he's not a guy who will use his on-paper technical advantage. But then it's very easy to just see this fight, you know, bit of swinging, hit the clinch, and then Cub Swanson does his favourite double overhooks Haragoshi and throws Artem to the ground. The thing about Lobov is that he's thought of as this huge knockout puncher, but he's got 4 knockouts in 13 wins, so not really a knockout puncher, or a guy who can knock people out but can't actually line up the connections very well. I don't really care about that fight. Even as much as I love Cub Swanson, I don't care. Diego Sanchez versus Al Iaquinta. This seems like a bit of a tune-up for Raging Al, because he's back from a lengthy layoff, having fallen out with the UFC in the run-up to UFC 200. Diego Sanchez hasn't been a particularly good fighter for years. I mean, his striking has never really evolved past swinging wildly, you know, left straight, right uppercut, left straight, right uppercut. You know, I remember in like 2006 or 2007 watching him fight Clay Guida and people telling me how amazing his striking looked, and it's literally Clay Guida covering up and Diego Sanchez coming in with the left straight, right uppercut over and over again. And then he just did exactly the same thing against BJ Penn, just threw the same stepping combination over and over and over. Didn't connect anything at all, because Penn would actually just give ground and counter or duck under and counter. Yeah, I mean, if Sanchez wins that one, that'd be great. I mean, Sanchez's grappling is still shit hot. I love watching that guy grapple. The thing I can't watch is him swinging at air, the opponent picking him apart, and then the judges giving Sanchez the decision because their vision seems to be based on movement like fucking raptors. Talos Vates versus Sam Alvey. Good fight in the middle of the middleweight division there. The middle of the mid. What else is going on here? Danielle Taylor, the woman with the largest thighs in MMA, against Jessica Penne. She's got one of those Marcelo Garcia bodies. If you've watched Marcelo Garcia versus Pablo Popovich, Pablo Popovich has this huge upper body. They're the same weight class, but Pablo Popovich is like a bodybuilder, and Marcelo Garcia has like a child's upper body, but these enormous legs. Fucking hilarious. Jake Ellenberger versus Mike Perry. That's a good fight. Ellenberger? Last I remember of him was kicking Matt Brown in the liver. He obviously lost that fight against Jorge Masvidal. That bizarre fight where his foot got stuck between the fence and the cage, and they didn't know what to do with it, so they called it a TKO. There's got to be a better way to deal with that. I don't know if he should have appealed that. But then, as I said, it's never worth appealing these things because it always goes tits up. Mike Perry obviously coming off that loss to Alan Jouban. Yeah, good fight. Alexis Davies, John Dodson versus Eddie Wineland. Oh, that's okay. Yep, got my pick for interesting fight of the night. John Dodson versus Eddie Wineland. Oh, and Joe Lozon and Stevie Ray are jerking the curtain. What a strange card. Stevie Ray, obviously, of Harlem Heat fame. And Joe Lozon, obviously, of all the bonuses fame. That's a really good fight. I like that a lot. Stevie Ray, his fight against Ross Pearson was a little bit of a mess sort of fight, but he has some pretty slick striking. And what was that? Was that his first? No, that's probably like his. That was certainly his first fight against like a big name, I think, in the UFC. Yeah, dude just needs a little bit more confidence, and Jolo's on, obviously, like, on the tail end of his career now, but he's still one of the best finishers this sport's ever seen. You know, if you give him an inch, he'll take a mile, and that's his real skill. A great opportunist like Carlos Condit or Martin Kampmann. Anyway, great looking card, and then Bellator's got Daniel Strauss versus one of the Pitbulls, the smaller one, and like an 18 fight card of nothing. God, that's a lot. Oh, AJ McKee's fighting. He's always pretty good. And Sadawad. He's good fun too. Oh, and they've given a Lima Thingy a 2-0 fighter. Very strange. But, you know, not as bad as when Explode Fighting Championship was building up her record with the soccer mum. God, that's awful. If you've never seen that video, go watch it. Anyway, sorry for the lateness this week. I've been a little bit low on time. I did, however, record my commentary over the fights as I watched them. I've only uploaded one of those because, you know, I didn't want to have to edit out all the nonsense as they walk to the ring. But I uploaded the alternate commentary track for Tim Elliott versus Lewis Smolka. Give that a listen, and if you like it, I might try and find a way to make it live. Might sneak into Vice or something, into their offices, and try and get them to record it for me. You know, it's just another little thing that I thought it might be fun to put out there occasionally. In any case, sign up to the Patreon if you want to support the show. Send your emails to fightsgonbypodcast@gmail.com. Buy the book Notorious at Amazon. And I've been your boy Jack Slack. This is the Fights Gone By podcast. Keep it flowy.